David Mabuza has declared a special official funeral, Category 2, for the late Ambassador Dumisani Kumalo, who passed away peacefully at his home on Sunday evening, the 20th of January 2019, at the age of 71. There's a memorial service currently being held. Let's listen in.
In Greenwich, Connecticut, and I had to commute for over an hour by train in the morning. He said in the meeting, "Henry, you better make sure that you put $100 in your shoe, under your socks." And I said, "What the hell for, Ambassador?" He said, "No, when you fall asleep on the train and they rob you of all your money, at least you'll have something to get the cab back home." And lo and behold, it happened one day. I wasn't robbed, though. I wasn't robbed, but I did fall asleep and I had to get a taxi home. And when I told him, of course, only the Kumalo laugh. "I told you so." But he will also be remembered for his calm and caring leadership. I was there with him on the day of 9/11. And we were in the morning meeting, and it's the first aircraft flew into the World Trade Center, I think 13 minutes before 9. And we were in our morning meeting preparing for the day, and then Rena, his secretary, walked in, and she told us about the flight. We quickly went into his office, and then we followed the unfolding of the 9/11 attack on television. But diligent as Kumalo always was, we left the office at about 9:45, going to the UN to attend a meeting. Until we got downstairs, and one of the LRPs came to us and said, "He's just come from the UN. They closed down the building. They've evacuated the building," because that was the next target on the terrorists list. You walk back, and of course, then only it dawned on us the impact that 9/11 has had on the whole of Manhattan and on the whole of New York, and how Manhattan was actually closed off and isolated from the rest of us. He went around to each individual, each official, local as well as transferred staff, to make sure that they were okay, that their families were okay, because we couldn't talk to our families, and that they had a safe way of getting home that day. That was Ambassador Kumalo. He really had a profound impact on me, my career, and me personally. And on a very personal note, I won't forget, and my family won't forget. Now, on a Saturday, the 18th of December, 2004, Ambassador Kumalo and his beautiful wife traveled all the way out to us in Stamford, in the hotel we were staying, to come and say goodbye. There was no need for him, the ambassador, to come and say goodbye to a councillor. But he did. Ambassador Kumalo, rest in peace. Oh, broer, hope to see you on the other side one day.
Thank you. My name is Steve Makungo, and I am the graduate. I'm one of the graduates of the University of Ambassador Dumisani Kumalo. I joined the embassy in 2004 in New York, and one of the first things we did is I got an opportunity to get into a car with Ambassador Kumalo as we visited the United Nations. And I remember walking with them into the UN from the security guard, Mike, who was standing out there, "Morning, Ambassador Kumalo," and Ambassador Kumalo shakes hands with them, asks about his family. And to all the other diplomats, as we went up the escalator into the United Nations, everybody seeking him out. And I, as a young diplomat, and I looked at this man and said, "What? I'm with a God right there." And from that point on, I would learn everything I would know from him. One of the first things I learned was, be always at your best. By being at your best is how you look. I remember we always had these visiting delegations, and we South Africans, sometimes it's cold in New York, and somebody comes there with a leather jacket, a scarf, a cap, And I remember a guy came from one of the departments. We're all in suits because we always knew we wear suits and ties. And that's how Ambassador Kumalo was. So this gentleman is there with the jacket, his cap, it's cold, and Ambassador Kumalo takes a look at him. Says, "You're not going to the UN looking like that. Go back to the hotel and change." He didn't even have a proper jacket. They had to buy him a proper jacket because with him, if you're with them and you're in his company, you're always at your best. So that's the first thing I learned, always be at your best. Next thing I learned is, be like snow. Paraphrasing Rumi, who is his favorite poet, be like snow and wash yourself of yourself. I'm a lawyer, so when I went there as a legal representative, and that's what I was going to do. So I arrive, there's a sixth committee, which is for lawyers, and that's what I do. 6 months down the line, he tells me, you can be more than a lawyer. You can be a proper diplomat. And so he makes me what he calls counselor, senior counselor. And one of my first responsibilities is to do a speech for him for the United Nations Security Council on Sudan, who at that time had been referred to the International Criminal Court. So I do the speech for him, and I write the speech, and I finish it. I run up to him, I submit it to him, he looks at it, he redrafts this, he sends it back, so back and forth, we discuss the speech. It's now about almost 9:45 when the UN Security Council is supposed to start. So I say, okay, Ambassador Kumalo, I'll accompany you to the UN. He says, well, you're actually the one giving the speech. I'm not going with you. What? The Minister of Sudan is going to be there, it's a big occasion. How am I going to be giving the speech? He says, well, you're giving the speech, and I'm not going with you. But you can use my driver. So I get into his car. I'm all dressed up. I have a speech. It's written, Ambassador Dumisani Kumalo. I'm at the back seat, and I am scared. I am so scared. And then it occurs to me, you get to be Ambassador Kumalo for a day. So don't be scared. You've seen how this man rules the UN. So I try up my best. Kumalo, look. Car parks in, the driver opens. Mike is there, he's smiling because he's expecting to see Ambassador Kumalo. I step out. Mike's look at me. Hi, Mike, how you doing? How's family? I go up. I get into the Security Council room, seats there, gavel. I'm all ready, and I give the speech. I give the best, as I could, Ambassador Kumalo speech. And then afterwards, as the meeting finishes, call comes in. Fanakit. And he called all of us guys, Fanakit, ladies, Ndomakit. Fanakit, how did it go? So Ambassador Kumalo, it went well. I'll tell you all about it. I'm coming back to the office. So I ran back to the office to tell him, Ambassador, it went well. As I ran into the office, his secretary looks at me and she says, well done. Oh, how do you know? Apparently, the entire time, he'd been monitoring the speech in the computer. So what a guy. So he was just making sure it was part of the lesson. So right there, I washed myself of myself, and I was just more than a legal person, but a diplomat. And that's also, there's an upside to that. The upside is when you're in the presence and you have the honor to have graduated from the University of Ambassador Dumisani Kumalo, you're never the same again. You're just never the same again. And you grow wings, you stop crawling, you stop being small, you grow the biggest of wings, and that's what I felt. And one of the other things I learned as well is whenever you take on a task, and always know the end goal. And here I remember, now I'm minister counselor, so other ambassadors are talking to me, and one of them, ambassador from Liechtenstein, came up to say, look, the post of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights is coming up, and we think this time an African and as Europe, will be willing to support an African if you guys can come up with a good candidate. So I ran up to Ambassador, I said, look, I just heard this from the Europeans. They think potentially it's a 10 for Africa, and if Africa came up with a good candidate, they'll be able to support. So he says, okay, send a letter to head office, have them give us names. So I get the names, and he takes a look at these names. He says, these people are joking. I said, what do you mean? Nobody knows any of these names. I said, yes, but it's from the Department of Justice and the ministry, and all the ministers have agreed, so we go with this. He says, we're not going to win with this. Tell you what, I'll handle it. Give a call to Nave Pillay. Nave Pillay is coming up to retirement. Give her a call and see whether she'll be interested in this. I said, but Ambassador will be going against this. Look, just do it. I'll handle the rest. So I give Nave Pillay a call, and she says, yes, she'll be interested. We put Nave Pillay's name down, and she wins. And that's how she became Human Rights Commissioner. Now, well and done. I do not know how he handled the ministers to tell them that he had put forth a different name. That's his they will talk about it whenever they meet sometime in their future. But what I learned from that is rule your area, know exactly when you get into something, what's your desired outcome, and be able to defend it. And that's what he did with that. The next thing I learned was, as well, have fun. Give all of you. Give all of yourself in life. I remember Valentine's Day is coming up right now. And on Valentine's Day, so Ambassador Kumalo will come into the office carrying roses. And he'll be giving roses to all the ladies, none for us guys. Here's a rose for you, here's a rose for you, and so on. So, and I watched this, and I remember when I came back from New York, I looked like a fool. I was walking around giving roses to the ladies. I thought I could pull it off, and I tried it a couple of years. I honestly thought I could pull it off, but nobody could pull it off better than Ambassador Kumalo. So have fun, and of course he had a famous. Many people walk around with the Bible. I always saw him walking around with a book by Rumi, his poetry by Rumi. Let me see if I can find anyone quickly here to finish off with. I think I had it right here. And it says, just to the family, to close with this. Oh, as I read this, could I please ask all of the alumni of the University of Ambassador Kumalo to please stand up? Everybody, so that you see them. Everybody, please, everybody. Now, it says, Rumi will say, and this is how Ambassador Kumalo will always read it, don't grieve. Anything you lose comes around in another form. And this is part of the legacy of Ambassador Kumalo. This, what is standing before you, is part of the form of Ambassador Kumalo. And to Sistiki, thank you very much for all the love you showed us. You were our mother when we were in New York. We love you. Thank you very much. And to the rest of the family, thank you very much for giving Ambassador Kumalo to us and allowing for him to be our father as well. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Dumisani Kumalo. At the outset, I would like to recognize the program director, Minister Shabangu, former Deputy Minister Bahad, the Kumalo family, esteemed guests, members of the diplomatic corps, ladies and gentlemen. To the Kumalo family, we thank you for sharing Ambassador Kumalo with us and for allowing him to embrace us all as his own during his decade-long stint in New York. Ambassador Kumalo was no ordinary ambassador. He was an extraordinary ambassador. He was a consummate diplomat and was one of South Africa's finest civil servants. He was an effective diplomat, a purposeful and persuasive ambassador. Ambassador Kumalo led from the front, and he ensured that staff at the permanent mission of South Africa rose to the occasion, and he ensured that our presence meant something. Ambassador Kumalo brought great talents to the permanent mission, and he recorded great achievements in the UN system. These achievements were a result of his great intellect, passion, and commitment. Ambassador Kumalo was able to impart his knowledge to officials across the 6 main committees of the UN. He guided colleagues on all complex and complicated issues that were negotiated in the UN system. He had a profound sense of the pulse and heartbeat of the United Nations during his extraordinary stint in New York. He was one of the leading ambassadors on UN management reform and UN reform, among many other things. At his apex, he showed...
You've been watching some emotional scenes from the memorial service of Ambassador Dumisani Kumalo. Remember, acting President David Mabuza has declared a special official funeral, Category 2, for the late ambassador who passed away peacefully at his home on the 20th of January at the age of 71. Now, Ambassador Kumalo served as South Africa's permanent representative to the United Nations in New York from 1999 to 2009, a period during which he represented South Africa during its first tenure on the UN Security Council. Now, in other news,